So before we begin talking about APIs and leveraging them to help testing primarily around automation, I wanted to give everybody who are not as familiar with this topic a quick introduction to what it is. If you were to Google APIs and look out on Wikipedia, you will get a pretty accurate definition of what APIs are. The problem with that definition, though, for most testers who are just getting familiar with APIs, it may not seem as helpful as it should be. So if you look at Wikipedia, it states that it's a set of functions, procedures, and methods or classes that are used by programs to request services either from the operating system or software libraries or any other service provider that can be run on a computer. Technically, that's pretty accurate. I don't know if that would help anybody looking at APIs for the very first time. Another example of an API definition that I was able to recently see as a trend in most sort of product companies that offer API testing, they mentioned it to be somewhat simpler than what Wikipedia has. And their message is APIs are the connecting tissue between different systems or layers of an application. My perspective on this really is trying to keep it simple, right? So when I think of APIs, I just think of it in terms of seamless connectivity. So for those who are not very familiar with APIs and are just getting started with automation and even thinking about API testing, start off with that common definition. And then as you advance your career and your understanding of APIs, definitely go with either the product company's definition or what Wikipedia has. So an important question or topic of discussion here is why should I worry about APIs as a tester? And really, why should I test with APIs? So what we've tried to capture here on this particular slide is talk about three different buckets that identify the impact or the reasons why testers need to be familiar with the concept of APIs and also leverage their automation and testing capabilities into using APIs. The first very obvious thing I think as a tester we all should be aware about are the industry trends. And if you have done any research recently or in the past few months as well, you would have noticed that a lot of the systems that are now being developed, their architecture leverages microservices. And a key foundation of microservices are APIs. You obviously are familiar with the power of the internet and all of the smart devices in our homes, in our cars, on us through watches and so forth. All of those essentially IoTs, the core needs of those connected devices are satisfied primarily by the use of APIs. So if you get into a situation where your engagement or your project deals with IoTs, you will definitely be dealing with APIs in that front as well. And then finally, tied to those IoTs and wearables that I'm talking about as well, cars, phones, watches, so forth and so on, all of that is collecting data. And as we know, AI and ML are coming in, trying to help analyze, help flush out, and make sense out of all of this data. The core highway where or how this particular data actually gets collected from these devices, from different systems, from different equipment, is through the use of APIs. The second category is around engineering, particularly in agile teams today. So as you guys are probably already familiar with, the whole concept of shifting left with testing, with delivering products, enabling the teams to get faster feedback in terms of defects observed, in terms of being able to test sooner, in terms of being able to integrate and leverage tools from developers. A lot of that involves leveraging APIs that are created and not necessarily having to wait on the UI front to be able to provide that feedback and defects observed or concerns from the testing roles sooner. So the shift left mechanism is definitely a core component that can be supported if people start using and leveraging APIs as part of their testing strategies. As I was saying earlier, also, not having to wait on UIs and not having to think about end user workflows, and being able to share information, to be able to identify information, be able to test using a non-UI platform such as APIs would work and be very beneficial to developers as well. It is part of their capabilities, obviously, to look at code and understand code far more efficiently, which helps us be put in an advantage where we can now be integrated tighter with the development team, with helping to troubleshoot issues by leveraging APIs as much as possible as well. And then finally, things that I personally like is low maintenance, low overhead. So by leveraging APIs, you do open up the opportunity to manage your changes very effectively and easily. The level of changes that you may have to do when you are doing test automation using APIs, the effort that goes into its maintenance and avoidance of flakiness within your scripts is far more lower and much easier to go ahead and manage. Finally, the third bucket I always think about the advantages or reasons why we should leverage APIs is all about test confidence. If you think about the primary reason why testers are critical to a delivery team, it's all because we are the ones who instill the confidence in a product that is finally or ultimately being delivered, right? So for us to be able to provide that level of confidence in the testing, in the expected behavior of the applications, by providing it through a speed of execution, meaning you could do it much faster, your results could be seen much sooner, your changes may be seen much sooner compared to the traditional approach of testing through the UI. That adds a lot of benefit in terms of being able to offer this level of confidence with much higher speed, right? Which ultimately also helps your entire team get your product to market faster. The other aspect of it is because you can create scripts much faster, you can manage it more effectively, you can expand it much more easily. That gives you a sense and ability to also expand the speed with which you add coverage in your testing. And all of this is a win-win situation where traditionally, compared to UI efforts where you have to spend a lot of effort, make sure that the flakiness of all of the UI based challenges are removed, you can gain a lot of speed in terms of being able to do more with the limited time we are traditionally given with in terms of testing as well. So following up, just to talk and bring this into context of automation, right? Obviously, Catalan is a test automation solution. And one of the key things that I think primarily the majority of the audience in the webinar today are focused on is either adopting automation or looking at and thinking about how can you add efficiency into your automation strategy. So APIs becomes a core foundation for allowing you to continue evolving, maturing, and adding efficiency into your automation strategy. It's a critical part, in my opinion, for automated tests because it can keep up or cope with the shorter release cycles that are being demanded by the product owners, by the engineers, and then also being able to assist in supporting the increased amount of changes that are being implemented into the application under test. And all of this really is to support the urgency and the need of the business to get to market faster, to make changes and bring those changes to market faster. And as testers, we can leverage APIs to help us bypass the issues of speed, really, and also a more granular approach to testing, looking directly at the code per se, without really adding in any additional overhead in terms of flakiness or breaking things by changing and making changes at a high pace. Also, as I was mentioning, all of the test automation that you do that leverages more of APIs and code level versus UI components and attributes uh, translates to much less maintenance effort when it comes to making changes to scripts and such, which is why it's gaining momentum and has already gained momentum, really quickly becoming the preferred choice for agile and DevOps teams. Also, something to keep in mind is from a definition perspective, we are continuing to mention and talk about API testing, but when most of us are probably testing web and mobile applications. So keep in mind that when we say APIs, what it means in that context is that they are the same as web services. So API testing really could be thought about also as automated tests on these web services. So here's a quick look at some of the data that we have seen in terms of the adoption rate of APIs, and teams are performing API testing. This is something that was mentioned in the state of APIs in the 2019 report. And I have a link at the bottom of this slide where you can go and download the entire report in detail. But something that caught my eye over here was, if you look at the data, if you each of the bars in this chart identify the average size of an organization and where they are in terms of leveraging APIs for testing. The different color codes that you see on the right represent where they are in sort of their adoption and application of API testing. And what was interesting to me was, almost all of the organizations, close to 91%, are either doing it already or are actively pursuing to introduce API testing. So it just sort of reflects the trend that the industry is moving towards. And for those of us who are not yet doing API testing, it's going to be very important for you to acquire and build that skill set very quickly to remain current and to be able to bring efficiency and value to the team. Another interesting data point that I wanted to share with the audience today also was this information that you can also go out and get from the State of Devops report that was done in 2018. This is one of the largest and most active reports that has been going on for the last 8 to 10 years, where the organizations are looking at enterprises and different teams who are either attempting or trying to attempt the implementation of DevOps tool chains and processes within their teams. And what the report actually does is it categorizes the people who are surveyed, the teams that are surveyed, into these 4 broad buckets: elite, high, medium, and low. And really, you can find more details about what each of those definitions are by simply Googling for State of DevOps Report 2018 and being able to download that report. But essentially, what this is saying is the amount of manual work is reducing faster and faster. And the more mature and the more efficient a team appears to be delivering their products with, the less and less manual efforts are continuing to be part of the core activities of the team. And you can see the testing activities by far, the rate with which things are changing for us as testers and how much of tool enablement is being available for us is phenomenal. And the goal of every engineering team is not be categorized in that low performant bucket that you see on the screen, right? Everybody wants to quite literally shift left in this table as well. So trying to get to the elite status, which sort of reflects the maximum efficiency and velocity of your team collectively, you can see that testing is only 10% of your activities are more manual focused.